All right, we are live. Vincent Freeze for the Naples Vice channel, coming to you from beautiful Naples, Florida. And what a day, what a day. Talking all technical still right now. The only fundamental thing to pay attention to is going to be, supposedly they're signing the Phase 1 trade deal on Saturday. That is the U.S. and China. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on, which isn't quite the same, being a little bit, not really catching a great deal of a bid today, despite the market sell off. In the U.S. today, and this is what I was calling for yesterday, what I was calling for on my Facebook channel. The Dow was down 183 to 28,462. The S&P was down 18 to 3221, and the Nasdaq was down 60 to 8,945. And I just wanted to make one distinction real quick. This is the Nasdaq Composite. This is not the Nasdaq 100. So when you hear me talking about technical levels and things like that, I'm talking about the Nasdaq 100, which is currently trading at 8,743. And I should just start giving that quote from now on. But these are the actual stock indexes from Wall Street. We have a little bit of weakness in Asia right now, with the Nikkei down about 181. Same story in Australia. They're definitely taking some profits going into the end of the year, it looks like, and I don't expect this to end just yet. However, I want to make one thing clear. All right, it's easy. Some of the profits that you can rake in, just stay vigilant. When we're in markets like this, especially to the downside, we can get some violent action on both trading, and I get a little profit on in the S&P. I let it go to my head a little bit, discuss some things like that because it's in this game. FX market is dull. The yen did have a pretty large rally today, though, as we might suspect, with the stock market kind of getting hit. Silver is getting a little bit of a bid at 1810. Gold at 1522. Beautiful. So we're getting a little bit of bid in the havens here, aside from the yen. And the bond yields are starting to fall a little bit. So for us bears, that's a good sign that they're starting to look for a little bit of safety. We got the futures up a little bit. They're up about 0.1%. So that's nothing really to see. That's shorts taking a little bit of a profit. And, we can expect that, a little bit of price fluctuation here. But the whole point of this is not all these other markets. We're looking for re-entry because by no means do I consider myself a big longer-term bear in this market. But no way, because we got the Fed. They're just pulling money out of every which way at this point, putting it into the system. And on top of that, we have the China catalyst that we really have to keep an eye out. We do have the jobs number on Friday, which, I don't think will be quite as big of a catalyst. I apologize. But it could lead to a little bit of something here. Pulling up the S&P chart. I don't know if it's just on my end, but man, my data has been really slow here. There we go. There's an ES chart. Okay. So the most important level that I'm watching right now here in the S&P is about 3150. That was and that's something that you got to be aware of, because when you're seeing areas where there's a great deal of orders, these algorithms, they want to blow out all these orders. It's usually their job, and they're getting ticks out of there and making money in the spread. So I think here, at 31.35. That could be something of note to pay attention to as well. So we'll call it 31.55 to 31.35 area, because it's never to a T. You don't pick a technical level and it reverses right there. But that's kind of a zone that I'm looking at to start either selling put spreads or getting back into long positions in the indexes. In regards to the NASDAQ, the level we want to be watching is 84.61 with kind of a kicker around about 8,400. So you got a little bit of a wider zone than in the NASDAQ, which is something that you might expect. I mean, the NASDAQ moves a little bit harder. Those are areas that I definitely am going to be watching from here. We have a small setup trend support at about 86.55. I'm not really looking at that area quite as much, because that's like right where the TD sequential would have told you to go short, and then they burned everybody to the upside, which I totally would have expected from here. Now, one thing that I thought was really fascinating was that my trading view isn't loading. That's pretty fascinating. The trend today, which is kind of the intraday gauge of where we want to be, paying attention to whether there's a heavier amount of buying or selling. The NYSE trend did not close above 1. It did gap up and then it kind of came back in, but it really stayed below there most of the day, which I thought was pretty fascinating. The NASDAQ trend did kind of the same thing, but the NASDAQ trend actually went lower. And I don't know if that was, we got a couple of longs trying to come into this mark assumption here. We're seeing people that are trying to find value in this area, which I don't see value anywhere. Another indicator, we did have the VIX popping off. We got up way above 15 at one point here on the VIX. And remember, the VIX is kind of the pricing of options, and options work as insurance. And I thought that was kind of fascinating as well. Another thing about this sell-off, because this sell-off has been weird. It's not like the traditional, pullback in the stock market where we have bonds coming up, we got yen coming up, we got gold coming up. Yeah, the yen was higher. Bonds really stayed down most of the day. And the other haven asset that they tend to pile into when the market starts to come up a little bit is the US dollar, which we also saw quite a bit of weakness in today as well. Yeah, and that's not saying that we're not going to continue this move, by no means. It's just little things like that I like to watch. I like to have all the information, and your job, my job, any of our jobs as traders is to take all this information and make decisions. That's what we do. We're decision makers, and we mostly act upon that. Now we do have the yen coming up a little bit. The S&P futures, they're a little higher. The NASDAQ futures are a little higher. We're going to wait and see, because remember, we still do have kind of some light volume because of the holidays. So that could exaggerate some of these moves just a little bit. But aside from that, those are the areas that I'm watching. And we could easily see the S&P coming down into that area by the end of the week. I think it's totally possible. We're going to have to wait and see how this whole thing plays out. We still want to tread very lightly here because we still have a lot of easy money in the system. And we also have this whole trade thing with China still looming over us. So we're really going to pay heavy attention here. But those are the levels that I'm watching right now in the S&P. Remember, very short-term bear, but in the long run, I still think this market has a lot of room to go to the upside. And I'm not going to sit here and try to make a prediction where I see the S&P going at the end of the year, because who knows? You can't make predictions that far out on the price, and I think it's ludicrous when anybody tries to do that. But after this pullback, I do think that we're going to keep going higher. The other catalyst, real quick, is crude. Crude did break that trend line that I've been talking about. Big doji day today, big nothing burger in crude. But we are starting to see some tensions in the Middle East. And usually that tends to do something to crude oil whenever we start to have like airstrikes or something going on in Iran, etc. So I think at this point, crude, any pullbacks are some pretty good opportunities here. The longer time frame, crude still looks very, very bullish. So we're going to keep watching crude to the upside, looking for pullback buy opportunities as well as pullback buys in the S&P and NASDAQ. I'll probably be shooting for more NASDAQ because I prefer the NASDAQ. You get better moves, more exaggerated moves in both directions in the NASDAQ. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that big time. So I'll have more updates how this whole thing plays out this week. I'm a bear. I'm going to continue to be a bear until I'm not. So that's what we're looking at here in the S&P going forward. So until then, I will talk to you next time and have a good one.